Slide with the people photo or
Correct. Yeah.
okay. Hopefully this moves smoothly, smoother than the start, but I wanted to first recognize my family before I get into the presentation because they've made a lot of concessions to allow me to have this crazy life where I live in California in the winter and farm in Manitoba in the summer. And my dad in the lower right there, he was a long-term Federated Co-op guy and Co-op Implements guy, many trips to Saskatoon, and then a long-time delegate with CAP in Manitoba. So he was kind of pleased that I was speaking to APAS today. And I also want to recognize Don Connick. He's a long-term family friend and a mentor and an inspiration to me. So when he suggested me speaking to your group, I was honored to have that opportunity. So I'm an agronomist by training and an extension agent and a research farm manager for Manitoba Ag. And while I was doing that, I became friends with a farmer in Iowa who was a precision ag expert. And we did a speaking tour in Australia together. And then a few years later, he asked me to join his new company that was looking at farmland investment in the United States. So this was 15 years ago, and that's when I left the government and helped Clay and Eric, their two friends, to start this company that I work for called Fall Line Capital. So our original focus was farmland investment in the United States, where we'd buy farms, fix them up, and then get local farmers to operate them. So I have 15 years experience as an institutional farmland owner, and I could talk about that for an hour or more with the APAS group, but that's not what I've been asked to do. After we started investing in farmland in the US, we started to get invited into ag tech investing opportunities, and we kind of had a knack for it. We had this experience being farmers ourselves, or me being a farmer, and our focus on farmland, and we started to get requests to invest in many different types of emerging ag technologies. So I'm going to be covering some of the things I've seen and some of the opinions I have about ag tech over the next few minutes. So I wanted to mention that there is a strong infrastructure and culture of support of ag tech innovation that already exists in Western Canada. You have Emertech, which is a fund similar to what we do, based in Regina. That's Kyle Scott and Rob Russell. Cultivator with Laura Mock, powered by Connexus. They're a great support of new ag tech innovation. You have Tallgrass and Vertex in Calgary. You have TNT Startup. You have a lot of groups that are supporting new ag innovation and food innovation in Western Canada. And I'm going to be, not dwelling on that too much, but I want to highlight that Canada does have a great reputation and a great infrastructure and ecosystem to support innovation. And these 4 points are from my friends at Emertech in Regina, where they're looking at where technology investment should focus. So robotics and innovation and automation, novel crop inputs. There's still opportunities there. And the companies mentioned in brackets are companies that they've invested in that are either based in Saskatchewan or based in Canada. And then you, of course, have artificial intelligence and software to support that, and ag fintech, technology that focus on farm management and financing. So one of the companies they've invested in, Emertech has invested in, is Swarm Farm. This is Andrew and Josie Bates from Australia, but this is very applicable technology to Western Canada. It's an autonomous kind of tool carrier that you can crop scout and spray and mow. Many of you have probably met Andrew and Josie. They've spent a lot of time in Saskatchewan, and just an example of one of the companies that Emertech's invested in. One of the recent investments have been in Rayhawk, which is a kind of a robotic grain car lid opener and closer, so that you don't have the dangerous job of walking along a rail car and opening and closing those lids. You'll be surprised at how many accidents still occur despite all the safety precautions. And this is shaping up to be a real Saskatchewan success story. Then there's Ground Truth Ag, which is a company that's grading grain through optical systems. There's a company from France that I've talked to, and one in Brazil that's grading grain with your cell phone. Ground Truth is a more robust system for a more professional application, but once again, it's automating the grain grading system and being implemented in Western Canada. So those are a couple of examples of Saskatchewan companies or Saskatchewan investment. I'm going to cover just some of the ones that our company has invested in. And we're based in San Francisco, in Silicon Valley. And like I mentioned, this is where I live in the wintertime. And then in the summer, in a week's time, I'll be returning to Manitoba to farm with my dad. We still farm, and I work for the company full time, but Delorain's my exotic office location in the summer, and San Francisco is the winter location. And because of being in Silicon Valley, we get access to a lot of really cool things just because that's our home. Um, One of the first companies I'll mention is our Zeta. This is protein design. And there'll be a theme here that protein design is going to be a big part of our future in all aspects of life, not just in agriculture. So we made this investment in our Zeta about 2 years ago. This is out of the University of Washington. And the founder of the company won the Nobel Prize for chemistry later that year. We made the investment before he won the Nobel Prize, and we were having our investor meeting that fall in December of 2024. And he didn't join the Zoom as when we thought he would join, and so it was kind of embarrassing for our investors. Then all of a sudden the screen came on, and he was at the Nobel Prize ceremony in Stockholm in a tux. And if you want to have a great meeting with your investors, have a spontaneous Nobel Prize ceremony in the middle of your investor meeting. We're very excited about this company. They're designing proteins for food products and pesticides and so on. Ethernovia is a company we invested in several years ago, and they've created a new communication protocol for equipment. So all those sensors that give us all the grief on trucks and cars and machinery, they've developed a communication protocol that's wireless. So as long as you can get power to that sensor, it will share the data with the central computers faster and more reliable than what you're dealing with today. You know, all those things that give us trouble. This wireless network that Ethernobi has is even faster than a wired network. So we're excited about that, you know, applicable to combines, tractors, planes, trucks. Micropep is out of France, and they're tiny proteins that are a base to make pesticides. So insecticides, fungicides, and herbicides being made from tiny proteins. Once again, coming back to protein design. Sound Egg is creating synthetic plant hormones to mimic biologicals in the field, but being more consistent because they're synthetic. And Sound in particular has been having a very difficult time with the Canadian regulatory process. And they told me a few weeks ago they've kind of given up on Canada. And of all the companies we work with, this one is very straightforward. It's a natural occurring hormone that they're just producing in a synthetic way. Yet the Canadian regulatory process has been ambiguous and difficult and very frustrating. And that's one message I want to make sure that your group, that APAS understands. Canada has this great ecosystem to support ag innovation. We have a great set of clients or potential customers in our farmers being very sophisticated. The weak link in the system, when we're attracting all this attention and talent from around the world, the weak link in the system is our bad and poor reputation with the regulatory process in Ottawa. And Sound's a great example of that frustration. Uco is a company out of Israel that was was modifying wheat so you wouldn't have any gluten sensitivities, eliminating any problems with celiac disease or gluten allergies. And I had connected them with the CDC and the University of Saskatchewan, and they were working on some projects together. But that is just too big of a problem. Modifying wheat in a world that doesn't have a lot of modified or genetically modified wheat, and then keeping it segregated through the entire production, marketing, processing chain. So we've had to give up on that. There's just not enough money in the system to make it work. But they have targeted a peanut allergy therapeutic that is very exciting, and that they'll be able to cure people of their peanut allergies and maybe other allergies. And the last one I'll mention is one of our more recent investments. It's ANZA. It's across the bay over in Berkeley, and they simply design DNA. This is, this biotech world that's still advancing and has so much potential. they produce DNA for all these other companies that are doing other things in biotech. And rather than getting the DNA and producing it in-house, they just phone up, and it's like the bakery that supplies all the pies to the restaurants in your city. So we're excited about that company. So a few companies I'll mention specifically. One is Verge. They're based in Calgary. I sit on the board of this company. This is technology that came out of Kindersley, Saskatchewan. And this is pathway optimization software. So you give them a field and they'll tell you the direction to go to cover that field most efficiently. There's many other aspects to this, and we don't have a lot of time, but this is kind of cool. They have augmented autonomy now that allows you to load the map in your tractor regardless of the GPS system, and it handles all the turns, all your headland turns, all the turns around your obstacles. Basically, you drive to the field, set up, and then the implement will steer itself for the rest of the field. And this is not a hardware thing. This is simply a software input that can be done in the field. And we're very excited about this company. One of the kind of the tangents here is that Verge has been helping Ukrainian government and the Ukrainian family farmers in identifying ordinances and so on. Um, this company is probably our most exciting and certainly one of our biggest efforts. Greenlight Biosystems or Biosciences has developed a way to produce high quality RNA to make a wide range of pesticides. So one of their products that was registered a few weeks ago or a couple of months ago is Naroa that kills the varroa mite in beehives. And this is RNA. So it's simply a protein sequence that has no impact on any other living thing, no impact on butterflies or the honeybees themselves, and kills the varroa mite very effectively. They also have a product that kills Colorado potato beetle extremely well. And this was the first product in the world to be registered that has an RNA base to it. So this insecticide, it's a powder you put in water, spray it on the crop like any other thing. The beetle eats it, and the RNA sequence stops the messaging from the brain to initiate digestion. So the beetle essentially starves to death. This is incredibly effective, very unlikely to develop resistance, and is sort of like making an arsenal of weapons out of ice that only, degrade into water over a period of time. So we're quite excited about this company, and they now have announced a potential herbicide, and their target weed is horseweed, which is Canada fleabane, difficult weed, first weed resistant to glyphosate, and they have a wild oat product in their pipeline as well. This is a picture I took on our farm in California that is now being leased by the company, a portion of it for their research farm. This is their fusarium head blight trials in wheat, once again using RNA to control fusarium head blight. This is a brave new world. We have essentially the ability to control all the pests in crops with simple protein sequences, as opposed to any small molecule chemistry. It takes a lot of money to create your own pesticide company, but the potential certainly is there. So this is an example of some of the products in their pipeline, in addition to the spider mite, sorry, the varroa mite. They have products that'll kill all mites and thrips. They have a product that controls canola flea beetle, powdery mildew, late blight in potatoes, seed treatments, and so on. And they have a strong presence in Canada. And this isn't entirely my doing, but I've certainly encouraged these connections. Farm Credit Canada, the Canola Council, Manitoba, University of Manitoba, Ag Canada, and they're looking at even, maybe even research facilities in Canada. I'm just very excited about this company and the potential for Canada and globally. This is a company we invested in a couple of years ago that modified corn so that corn became the vaccine for livestock. And in this first product, it controlled the deadly PED virus that is a real problem in Saskatchewan and Manitoba. There's no commercial way to control this virus. So they modified the corn that would initiate an immunization of the piglets while they were still in vitro. And the piglets were born with about 50% immunity to the disease. This is very exciting stuff. This means virtually any stable disease, you could create a vaccine by simply modifying the corn. And corn, it's just corn. You could put it in a bin for 10 years, pull it out, feed it to the pigs, and it'd still be 100% vaccine. We had to shut this company down. It took too much money, too much time, and you needed registrations from the FDA, the EPA, and the USDA, three government agencies that don't usually talk to each other. So the technology is sitting on the shelf somewhere, and at some point, you may be getting your vaccines from eating cornflakes. But just one of the really exciting companies that we've had to shelve because of lack of funds to get them to commercial success. And the reason is so much investment money and money in general has gone to artificial intelligence and to defense. There's no money left for biotech and medical tech and education tech. It's just gone. And very frustrating for us because many of our companies have achieved strong technical goals, but have not been able to find the money to get commercial goals. And this is an important point because Canada is the one place in the world now with the large FCC venture fund where there is money to get companies to commercial success. So credit to Farm Credit Canada for setting that money aside, and it'll be deployed over the next 4 years and has the potential to make Canada like a world leader in livestock, in ag and food tech. I put this company Veritas Bioseed down there because they're a Saskatchewan, Manitoba company. It's very early stage. I can't share a lot about it, but they're looking at modifying crops as well to do the GLP-1. So you would get your Ozempic from your wheat or your canola as opposed to the $1,000 a month it costs to get the injection. And in first target is actually pet food so that you would be keeping pets from getting obese because you're putting that Ozempic feature in their pet food, in their peas or whatever they're using for protein. That this is going to happen. And this is technology that will be part of our lives and our livestock operations. We just don't know which company's going to make it and what time it's going to happen.
Scott,
Yeah.
excuse me, sorry to interrupt. Uh, would you just be able to let Brenda and I know when to advance the slides because we're
Okay.
advancing them for you? Thank you very much.
Yeah. Next slide.
Thank you. Which slide are you on your end?
This piglets
Perfect.
nursing
Okay,
on the
thank you.
yeah. So well, I'll go to the next slide here. Is it the tractor one? Farmer Titan?
Yeah, you bet.
Okay, this is a young woman out of Manitoba that's come up with this idea, which is really kind of cool. You put a QR code on a sticker and put it on your implements, and that is your history of that implement. So oil changes, tire situation, any sort of issues with any piece of equipment is simply scanned through the QR code to your phone to the cloud. So when you sell that piece of equipment or it goes to a dealership or whatever, the whole record of that implement is in that QR code. And it's called Farmer Titan. And I'm sure, as your operations get larger, this would be a great way of maintaining fleet maintenance and management. But also when you go to the dealership looking at a used piece of equipment, you'd be able to scan the code and know exactly the service history of that implement. So I thought that was kind of cool from a young person out of Manitoba. Next slide. So this is Grain Tracker. This is a Saskatchewan, Manitoba company, to one from each province, and this is a kind of an ingenious way to track grain. And we'll go to the next slide. So what they've done is you put RFID tags similar to what you put in the ear of a cow, and it's on the combine, on the grain cart, on the auger, and even in the grain bin. And these tags are really inexpensive when you're buying them in bulk or applying them in bulk. And then that location is tied to the combine, tied to the yield monitor. So you know where that grain cart load is coming from in the field. It's going in the truck and it's going in the bin. It's kind of like having a complete chain of supply chain record all the way to the bin. And we'll go to the next slide. And so this is a farm. This is a farm at Um, I think it's at Mydale, Saskatchewan, and they have all the bins tagged, and you know which each the exact volume in each bin, and it's just kind of an ingenious, inexpensive way to track all the grain and all the bins and where it comes from in every place in the field. So that's called Grain Tracker. And another technology, we'll go to the next slide, that this company's developed is a GT Flow, which measures grain in an accurate way as it exits an auger or a belt conveyor. So you'd be able to fill any sort of a truck or a cart or whatever and know the exact volume if you didn't trust the scales on that implement or it didn't have that scale system. And it can be tied to the tracking device as well. So it's pretty easy now to really track grain even in large operations. So the next one here is a hog barn, and this is two technologies out of Canada. This is where we get into some of the artificial intelligence stuff. They're using facial recognition for monitoring staff coming in and out of barns, and this really is an important aspect of biosecurity. So you have tags on the feed trucks, vets, workers, and so on, and facial recognition and cell phone tagging, and it's how artificial intelligence is going to be an important part of ag and monitoring data in a big way and in a fast way. And there's a lot of uptake of this company in the prairies already. And Bin Sentry is a simple security camera that's mounted by a magnet in a feed bin and measures the exact volume of what's in that bin at all times. So you won't have bins running out of feed on a confined livestock operation. An ingenious idea that came out of guys that were working at BlackBerry in Waterloo, Ontario, and it's now a global company. I just thought those are kind of great Canadian success stories. The next picture is two pigs with next slide is two pigs. This is a slide out of Israel. These guys, Farm Cs, use vision AI systems to measure and identify pigs in a barn very, very quickly, and they know the exact weight and condition of a pig. This is where AI is going to be a big part of livestock production, is this visual recognition and management system. So the Farm C system can tell you the exact weight of a pig, but the cool thing about it is they're mounting paint guns above the water nozzles in each of the pens. So a simple paint gun, and so if an animal has got some health issues that they see from the cameras, they'll shoot a red paint dot. If it's ready for market, it'll shoot a green paint dot. So when you go to the pen in the morning, you'll know all the pigs that need to be shipped from the paint dot on their forehead. I thought that was kind of an interesting idea. Phlox AI is once again visual AI systems in chicken barns that's trained on the comb of the chicken to diagnose feeding and health issues. There's another AI system that's trained on the feces of a chicken barn, and they manage the feed and management of the barn that way. Targan is a vision AI system that separates male and female chicks as they're hatched. And Ferrocin is another kind of AI system that is using pheromones as a way to control insects, not just monitor them. And they have a project for Western Canada for the coming year. Cattle Scan, the next slide, is a bolus company. This is out of Guelph, Ontario. You put the bolus in the cow and it monitors all the internal things as far as temperature, estrus, health, but it's also the ID of the cow. So instead of putting a smart tag or a collar on the cow, you put the bolus in, it lasts several years, and it communicates within about 200 meters. And, it's just another advancement on how to monitor the biometrics of an animal and the ID and condition of the animal. This next picture here, this cattle care one, if you push it and initiate the video, this is a company that phoned me many years ago, a Russian guy. He phoned me at the office one night and he said he had a system that monitored dairy cows with a security camera using the markings of the dairy cow. And I said, well, how does that work with brown Swiss or, jerseys? And he said, damn, I heard you were a tough guy. I've never had an investment firm ask me that before because it doesn't work when it's a monochromatic cow. So last year, I saw him again and asked him how things were progressing. And he says, I've given up monitoring cows. I'm using artificial intelligence and simple security cameras to monitor the staff in a dairy barn. And I said, well, how's that working? And he says, well, I'm a Russian using Chinese cameras monitoring Latin American workers in a California dairy. It's working great. So I thought this is the brave new world of artificial intelligence and vision where they're actually monitoring staff rather than livestock. He has 135 dairies that are paying him to monitor the staff while they're milking cows. It's very Orwellian and kind of, well, it's odd, but I thought that was an interesting example of where this technology is taking us. Here's the solar powered smart tags that I'm sure if any livestock producer in the audience is aware of. This is a company out of Fargo, North Dakota, 701X that just launched in Canada a few weeks ago. And their smart tag, is satellite hooked so they can monitor. They have them on wild camels in Saudi Arabia, for instance. They can monitor livestock where they are anywhere in the world. But the unique thing about this tag is it's so accurate it can assess the mounting of bulls, and so you can put them on a bull, and you'll know you can set the cadence, but it'll tell you if the bull is mounting or not. These will be a part of our future in livestock. Where the value is right now depends on the cost of these units, but they're going to get less and less expensive, and there's several alternatives. This one looks to be one of the best right now, but something for your audience to understand is how this technology will be a part of our future. How do we standardize it? How do we support it? And how do we maximize its use when you know where every animal is and maybe the temperature of the animal and that sort of thing? This is one of the four companies that make virtual fencing. This is Halter out of New Zealand. Over the weekend, there was big news because they've been valued at 2.1 billion dollars, and that made no sense because there's three other companies that do this. And then I find out it's Peter Thiel, the guy that's financed JD Vance to be the vice president. He's behind this unbelievable amount of money and valuation for this company. So there is, these companies that make virtual fencing systems for cattle and sheep and goats, and they're going to be a tool that we will use in the future. One of the fascinating things, a few weeks ago, I talked to a researcher in South Dakota. He has the Gallagher East Shepherd systems on his cows. It's a grain and livestock research farm, and he has been blown away at how well this works, even in the winter in South Dakota. So he was managing cattle following the combine as they were harvesting from his phone. So he's kind of grazing in behind the combine, setting up weed areas, concentrating them on certain parts of the field. And then during the winter, he's been corn grazing with the collars in the snow, not needing to put up any sort of fences in the corn. And he said in 2 years, he's only had two cows get out. He has some places where he doesn't even have perimeter fencing. And the cows went back to their farm where they came from 5 miles away. He is very keen on this technology. And as it becomes less expensive, it's going to be a part of how we raise livestock in Western Canada. There's just no getting around how amazing this could be as the price point becomes more relative. So one of the last things I want to draw attention to is sort of out of agriculture. This is the motorcycle slide, the next slide. This is a company that was the darling of the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas in January. And that crazy wheel hub wheel was their announcement a year ago and was the darling of the show then. And then in January, they announced the world's first solid state battery. So this company is based in Finland. That battery looks like a Pop-Tart. You could buy the motorcycle and the system in January. They're going to start delivering them next week, and we will know for sure if there's any fraud associated with this, but the claims are unbelievable. So there's no liquid, no fire risk. It works equally well at -40 as it does at 100 degrees. It charges in 5 minutes. It has the potential for 100,000 cycles, which is essentially 50 million miles of application. It's 400 kilowatts, which means it's twice the energy density of most conventional batteries, lithium batteries. There's no rare earth. There's no lithium in it. It's very inexpensive. There's no reason to take over Greenland to take the rare earth minerals there because it's not needed. It's inexpensive and there's no cooling needed. And that wheel hub motor, they've put 13,000 foot-pounds of torque through that. So you could put it on a massive tractor or semi, and that's how the power is transported. This is unbelievable, because now you could put a 2,000 kilometer range in a pickup truck and drive at -40 from Calgary to Winnipeg. Um, this will change, all sorts of transportation issues if it turns out to be true. And they've been announcing every week independent tests leading up to the launch of you getting delivery of these motorcycles next week. And there's a lot of excitement around this. Now, regardless of this donut thing not living up to its hype when it gets released next week, Samsung has announced their solid state battery a few weeks ago. And Factoral's been running one in a Mercedes for the last few weeks that is giving them like 2,000 kilometers of range. So whatever you think of regarding electric cars and trucks right now, this is going to change dramatically. I'll skip through this a bit here. Um, if you want to go to the robot, slide 39. This is a laser plasma soil sampling system. That's a kind of a computer generated image. But I will be looking at the system tomorrow at Stanford University. And this will apparently solve the promise of on-the-go nutrient analysis in farming. There's tools out there right now. They're not working very well because of calibration issues or just technical limitations. This plasma thing, it doesn't look like this, but this is kind of where the technology came from on the Mars rover. I'll be looking at it tomorrow. I'm pretty excited about it. And I will maybe skip through to this slide here where it's the catalytic converter on a computer. This was a catalytic converter that the Gates Institute developed for dairy cows and cows in general to stop methane mitigation. This is the most insane idea I've ever seen because it doesn't work. And there has been many, many companies that I have reviewed and told them the technology doesn't work. And I'm kind of known as the farmer in Silicon Valley that destroys a lot of ideas. And this was just an example of one. This thing only works if the cow sits on its right side. And if the cow sits on its left side, it doesn't work. So when I asked them, what are you doing about that? They said, we are putting considerable money into making the cow only sit on its right side. They put $14 million into this project. They've given up on it. So my last message here is to get involved, and thank goodness there's a big crowd there, and that you've made a commitment to APAS. But when you have all this technology, protein design, artificial intelligence, the whole disruption of the transportation industry, that can cause a lot of anxiety and intimidate you. But get involved and make sure your priorities are known by the people that are making these decisions. Be diligent about the further consolidation of our input suppliers and our marketing options. That's a problem everywhere, and it's something that we have to try and maintain options. And one thing that artificial intelligence is doing is creating a massive amount of data that and results from data or summaries from data, but it's not necessarily correct. We continue to need to produce independent data so that these tools to analyze it are more effective rather than just creating more noise or distraction. So research farms and research systems that are maintained independently are incredibly important as we get these tools that are so effective at managing and interpreting this data. And then the last thing I want to come back to is continue to lobby our government for a more reasonable and predictable registration process. So thank you.
Scott, I want to thank you for an incredibly interesting presentation. I'm assuming you're going to be around here for a few minutes for a couple of questions.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
I don't know what slide you're on, but there is, that's the first field of canola, winter canola in Louisiana on our farms in Louisiana, which is kind of interesting.
Perfect. So questions.
Ron Connick.
Oh,
Hi, Scott.
microphone 2 in the middle.
Thanks very much for the presentation. Scott, I wanted to ask you, lots of these are coming from the top down. these inventions are identified by companies or identified by people in research. But is there a possibility or a pathway for us as producers to write the requests for the recipe? Like, for example, can we get a more efficient and economical gopher poison, or can we ask for a recipe for any other problem that we might have, like retention of ID tags in cattle, for example?
Right.
Is there any pathway for us to write the requests and for investors to get a hold of it? Thanks, Scott.
Yeah. And thanks, Don. Good to hear your voice again. I can't see the audience, but I recognize the voice. Um, Yeah, there was a there's a lot of directions we could go here, and I had some points, but I had to skip over them. But that example of that cattle tag is you get this Silicon Valley billionaires that are kind of wanting to just simply disrupt things, and they did that with vertical agriculture that made no sense, and billions got lost there. There was billions that have been lost in essentially maggot farming, black soldier fly, and that didn't make a lot of sense. And so we have this huge pool of money, and these people are getting extremely wealthy right now, but they're always looking to disrupt ag. They're not really looking to address the needs that farmers are really wanting to focus on. So that's something I'm trying to stay on top of. As far as the gopher poison thing, um, it's a problem all over the place. And if the green light company, they could likely make an RNA product that would only kill gophers. And the targets they've picked right now, the problem with many of these startups is they need to have commercial success quickly to pay for all that R&D they did. And then at some point in the future, they become a company that can address other things that, are maybe broader. So the Colorado potato beetle, the varroa mite, there wasn't a lot of commercial products being effective. And the same with the vaccine, a PED, there was nothing that was commercially available. So you have companies that are directed to where the most market potential is right off the bat, where they're kind of going to be alone there. Gophers is a good example. It's just not been realized by many of these companies, and it's not something when you're killing a little mammal that's going to be a bigger regulatory hurdle. But it definitely is something that this new technologies we have and designer proteins and RNA and so on, where you can target living things and not have any impact on any other living thing, is possible. So, I guess I come back to your ecosystem in Saskatchewan already that you have with Amertech and Cultivator and the groups in Calgary that as APAS, you could say, you guys fund new research. This is a big priority for farmers in our area. They have a network to stay on top of what farmers' needs are as well, but they're the ones that are seeing technology at the local level.
All right, thank you very much. Seeing no